Should we trust the experts, trust the science, or should we trust RFK Jr.? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by the best heart health supplement in the world, Cardio Miracle. So, you want to learn how to lower your resting heart rate, lower your blood pressure while improving your pump at the gym. Stick around. We'll talk about that later in today's episode, or just head to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS or scan that little QR code over my shoulder. But let's dig into today's topic of conversation. RFK Jr. Yes, he was over on Capitol Hill over the past week here, being grilled by some folks over in Congress. And it went just about as you would expect. Fireworks galore. And by the way, today's episode is a solo episode. We're going through some of those highlights with RFK. Also, some other highlights of RFK appearing over on Bill Maher. And we're going to start out here looking at something we all experienced over the past 5 years. And that was the COVID insanity, which it very much was insanity. I know we here at the Brian Nichols Show, we faced slings and arrows for years. We watch as our Facebook page, our X page, which was Twitter at the time, our YouTube channels get throttled, suspended. I mean, it was a nightmare to be able to talk about what was happening to all of us during COVID, whether it was being pushed to get vaccinations, being pushed to wear masks, being pushed to either get the jab or lose your job. We watch businesses being closed down, lockdowns across the board, and you were social pariah if you dare to question the narrative, if you were one to dare to question the experts or the science. You were told that you wanted people to die, that your policies were dangerous. Some of us even had some of our very nearest and dearest friends turn their backs on us because they thought that we were a threat to the way we could actually get out of COVID. And it was very eye-opening for lots of us. And I would say for other folks, it was a moment for them to have some very critical introspection, I guess is the right word, because we saw during COVID, narratives were challenged in real time. And you had some folks who the cognitive dissonance, it made them almost have this inability to address what was actually happening versus being told a certain narrative from whether it's the experts, right, the government officials, the bureaucrats, and then actually going along with that or trying to think for yourself. And a lot of folks just deferred to what was easiest, and that was just trust whatever we're being told from these policymakers, from these government bureaucrats. And I think this is really the reason that RFK is even at the head right now of HHS, because RFK, back especially with the Maha movement really coming to be what it is today, back here in the early 2020s, like 2022, 2023, the Maha movement was almost a direct response to the COVID insanity. And it had been festering behind the scenes. Not that the Maha movement needed any festering, but when you look at the overarching narrative around the vaccine schedules and what we're putting into our food, what we're putting into our bodies, what we're putting into our environment, Maha, Make America Healthy Again, it's been around, but COVID really pushed Maha over into not just being a conversation happening behind the scenes, but really into the forefront of all of our world view, because now all of a sudden we were being forced to actually address what was happening in real time. And I know, again, we here at the show, we took a lot of slings and arrows for doing that. And a lot of other folks in the Maha movement did as well. And I've had this argument with a lot of libertarians and just a lot of folks in the right in general, is that they look at what RFK has been doing over at HHS with cleaning house, with changing a lot of the narratives, right, that have been pushed into policy over the past few years, and actually looking at things through a critical lens. Now, I'm not saying everything RFK is doing is perfect by any stretch, but it is absolutely a step in the right direction. And by the way, if we had someone who was a great, perfect libertarian fit in office, in this position at HHS, he'd probably be doing almost the exact same thing. So I want to just, again, go ahead. Let's dig into some of these clips here from today. And we're going to start out with COVID insanity, because it was absolutely insane. And what we're going to do here is first start with RFK's appearance over on Bill Maher. And the conversation really did pick up around the COVID jabs. So we're going to go ahead and take a listen here to RFK, and then I'll jump back in here with my thoughts. Let's take a listen.
There's 25% of Americans who believe that they know somebody who was killed by a COVID vaccine. Killed. 25% of Americans, 52% of Americans believe that the vaccines are causing injuries, including death. 52%. Oh, if you look at the clinical trial studies, the actual studies that were done that were released of the Pfizer vaccine, Moderna has not released it. If you look at the Pfizer vaccine, there were 22,000 people in the placebo group, 22,000 people who got the actual vaccine. And the people who got the vaccine had a 23% higher death rate from all causes at the end of that study.
But that could not be the disease itself?
No.
Because we know that...
If it is, then the vaccine doesn't work, does it?
Well, no. That's not...
So, obviously, Bill Maher has an opinion. And I would say Bill Maher's opinion, while lots of folks in Bill Maher's position, they were very much going along to get along, right? They were following whatever the narrative was. You can see that Bill Maher definitely is willing to engage in the conversation nowadays. I think namely because the proverbial, the elephant is in the room, right? Like, you have to be able to discuss this openly. Otherwise you really lose that credibility with your audience. You can hear even Bill Maher's audience were laughing at RFK's, well, maybe then the vaccine doesn't really work like it says it works. Now, I'm sure we're probably going to get throttled here on YouTube just for this episode because we're even talking about this. But thankfully, YouTube has pulled back a little bit in terms of their censoriousness over the past few years. But this goes into, why does Bill Maher kind of have this preconceived notion that vaccine equals good? And it's a skepticism against the effectiveness of the vaccine, right? It's not a matter of saying that the vaccine was causing people to pass or unalive, right? Well, I guess not unalive, just, unalive. But like, looking at the vaccine itself, you almost were force-fed the narrative. You have to accept the fact that the vaccine is safe and effective. You have to accept the fact that the vaccine is going to do what we say it's going to do. It's going to stop transmission. It's going to stop the disease itself from manifesting in your body. It's going to stop all the terrible life-threatening symptoms. And if you question that, you were a kook. So to see Bill Maher, and a lot of folks like Bill Maher, they have the exact perspective still, but they're trying to kind of walk through this and show, I'm willing to engage in a conversation. But where did this mentality come from, right? Like, where did this just blind trust of the narrative even manifest from? And a lot of folks, if we were to go back, it really stems from the government bureaucracies I talked about earlier, who they promoted this narrative. They scared people. And RFK, again, was just over on the Capitol here, Capitol Hill. And he was talking about this in detail. And, before we go into the other conversation around just overarching vaccine questions, let's dig into here just the narratives of insanity that were promoted from the government, top down, with these different bureaucracies like the CDC, the NIH, HHS, and then how it manifested in terms of public policy. Let's go ahead and take a listen here.
Do you believe COVID-19 was politicized?
Yeah, the whole process was politicized. Senator, we were lied to about everything. We were lied to about natural immunity. We were lied to about, we were told again and again the vaccines would prevent transmission, they prevent infection. It wasn't true. They knew it from the start it wasn't true because that's what the animal studies and the clinical trials showed. We were told that there was science behind cloth masks. The CDC allowed the teachers union to write the order closing our schools, which hurt working people all over the country, and then pretend it was science-based. All of these issues, and then I can show you, like, for example, Chairman Wyden was talking about me politicizing ACIP. During COVID, probably the most famous scientist on ACIP was Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, the great world-renowned epidemiologist and vaccinologist. And he criticized the COVID booster mandates. They ejected him from COVID because he wasn't in the orthodoxy. The two biggest health officials at FDA during COVID, Dr. Gruber and Dr. criticized the Biden mandates, vaccine mandates. You know, President Biden said in August, I would never take that vaccine, the Trump vaccine. And he came in, he mandated it, and then he fired the two top health officials at FDA who said, hey, this thing has not been properly tested. So the whole process was politicized. And even today.
So I'm 15.
All right, folks, elephant in the room. The world's a mess. Inflation is crushing savings. Politicians keep spending. So what's your backup plan? Oh, you don't have one. Well, if you don't worry. That's why the Expat Money Online Summit exists. From October 10th through the 12th, my good buddy Mikkel Thorup's bringing in global experts to show you how to protect your wealth, secure a second residency, lower your taxes, and even own property abroad. And by the way, it's totally free. So no flights, no hotels, just grab your ticket and tune in. And this year, the focus is on Latin America, with booming opportunities in countries like Argentina, El Salvador, Panama, and Paraguay. These doors are open right now, but only if you take action. And how do you do that? Well, head to expatmoneysummit.com and reserve your free, yes, I said free ticket. And by the way, if you want a full VIP package, you can use promo code TBNS for 20% off. That's expatmoneysummit.com, promo code TBNS. And now, let's get back to the show. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, if we're being fair here, that is literally the tip of the iceberg. And we don't need to go back and rehash everything that we've discussed many times here on the show regarding the COVID insanity and just how just the idea of raising questions was punished, right? And as RFK talked about, there was absolutely retribution for folks in the administration who were raising these red flags saying, hey, this isn't making sense, right? We're not properly testing these vaccines. And by the way, they are categorically not vaccines, right? They are not a traditional vaccine. These are mRNA jabs that are completely different in terms of what they actually are composed of. So there was a lot of questions around that. And again, the fact that you were not allowed to just ask very genuine and I would think just very common questions around the safety and efficacy of these vaccines and take that a step further into all the different mandates that were put forward in the attempt to mitigate the virus. As he mentioned, cloth masking, the 5 or 6 foot social distancing, the idea of social distancing, closing outdoor parks, just the narrative, closing the public schools, locking down businesses, locking down just entire cities and society. It was backwards in terms of how we approach this. You were a bad person if you even raised any suspicion that this might not be the best plan of attack. And this is why RFK has so much ground support across the country, because we all lived through this. And yes, there are a lot of folks who they will not let their cognitive dissonance allow them to see the other side of the argument. They all automatically assume that anybody who even questions the narrative, they're kooks, they're anti-science, they're anti-expert, right? That's not the case. We've had here on the show, like literally dozens and dozens of experts from multiple sides of the aisle to talk through this. And we did this in detail during COVID. And a lot of the narratives that we kept on hearing not only were shown not to be accurate, but on our side, I say our side, the side who was raising concerns, raising these questions, we've been proven right. And not saying, again, that the COVID jab is just by its nature dangerous, but that there are questions around it. We were watching as young men in particular were having issues of myocarditis. I know lots of folks, not just young men, but women as well, healthy folks who got the jab and ended up having these heart issues, or all the other questions and potential links that we've seen with other manifestations of potential vaccine injury. Go to the VAERS database where you see just the skyrocketing uptick of folks saying, yeah, we're having issues here, but not being looked at by these regulators. So it naturally leads to distrust, and it leads to opening up to the next question of, okay, well, this is one area that I think we can all look at, the COVID vaccine, and say, well, the narrative from public policy didn't necessarily match what we were seeing in terms of outcomes. Where else is the government not telling us the full truth or outright lying to us, right? And this goes into the arguments around chronic diseases. We've seen this over the past 20, 30 years, an uptick in these chronic diseases, really like nowhere else. We've seen the skyrocketing cases of autism, of just the genetic diseases, and the questions around them saying, why is this happening in such vast amounts here to Americans. And lots of folks, while they're asking this tough question, they don't want to get the tough answers. So let's dig into this. Why do so many folks get nervous around this conversation around chronic disease and potential links therein? Let's listen to what RFK said here over on the Capitol this past week.
This morning, I got the latest numbers from CDC that 76.4% of Americans now have a chronic disease. This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. 1950, it was 3%. Today, it's 76.4%. 8 out of 10 of our kids cannot qualify for military service. This is a national security issue. When my uncle was president, we spent zero on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. It's the biggest cause. It's increasing. And all of the arguments that Republicans and Democrats have about single payer, Obamacare, or the various ways to allocate the health dollars, they're all like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you.
And I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
That sounds like a pretty bold claim that people at the CDC not only were not doing their jobs, but in many cases, or just in some cases, I'll give benefit of the doubt, were just outright ignoring or being corrupt and trying to work with these big pharma shills that are out there to make a narrative look palatable when the data was either being ignored or sometimes outright hidden. What? I know. Surprising. Let's go back to another conversation here. This is with Senator Ron Johnson, where RFK details how there were some studies, specifically in this case, talking about chronic disease that were just outright dismissed. And it's eye-opening. Let's go ahead and take a listen here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you one example, and I could sit here and give you thousands. But in 2002, CDC did an internal study of Atlanta and Fulton County, Georgia children, and looked at children who got the MMR vaccine on time and compared those to kids who got them later. So in other words, kids who got them before 36 months and kids who got them afterward. The data from that study showed that Black boys who got the vaccine on time had a 260% greater chance of getting an autism diagnosis than children who waited. The chief scientist on that, Dr. William Thompson, the senior vaccine safety science at CDC, was ordered to come into a room with 4 other co-authors by his boss, Frank DeStefano, who's the head of the immunization safety program, and ordered to destroy that data. And then they published it without that fact.
And this leads to the distrust, right? This sets the narrative away from just being a narrative to being data, to being evidence. The fact that the CDC went out of their way to not just destroy data, but in their destroying of data and the omission of data, then presenting a counter narrative that completely contradicts the actual findings. It speaks to why so many folks look at what we hear as the truth, right? The capital T, truth, with such skepticism. Because if we know and we have data showing that the CDC, these folks who are put in positions of power to keep us healthy, or at the very least to mitigate the risks and harms associated with not taking certain vaccines or taking certain vaccines, the overarching goal, right? Public health. And if they're knowingly going out of their way to manipulate or omit data in pursuit of a narrative, that just, it leads to folks not trusting. And I have 2 more clips here back to back. And this just, again, it goes to why there are so many people who are just tired of what we've seen as the status quo, where you're not allowed to ask questions. You're not an expert. You can't raise a concern. And Ben Shapiro does this a lot too. You can't just ask a question to ask a question, right? Like, no, you can ask a question just to ask a question, because the people who are presenting their truth and then that truth manifesting in public policy, they have an obligation to, at the very least, answer those questions, because they're the ones who are putting forth the policy. So I think, the ability, and I think everybody else has the ability, to push these policymakers, to push these lawmakers to actually shut up and take a moment and address our concerns. Yes, we are asking questions about the efficacy of these vaccines. Yes, we are asking the efficacy of these public health policy measures. Yes, we are asking, did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself, and who was involved in the narratives behind the scenes to help hide the Epstein scandal in our government? We are allowed to ask questions because we are not really countering, the questions themselves are in direct response to policy and narratives being pushed by these lawmakers, by these bureaucrats. Sorry, we can't ask questions. We can just go ahead and ask questions without some, needing to go through the expert channels, right? We're allowed to, as the populace here, the folks who actually the policymakers are supposed to respond to, we are allowed to raise up these concerns. So let's go ahead. We have two clips here back to back. We'll rapid fire these. The first one here is with RFK responding to Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia. And then there's a fun discussion with Bernie Sanders and RFK. Let's go ahead and take a listen there.
So when's the last time you really thought about your heart health? No, not after just a bad checkup or after seeing a loved one go through something scary, but really thought about it. And the reality is most people don't until it's too late. We chalk it up to fatigue, brain fog, or, just high blood pressure, or hey, maybe we're just getting older, or it's that dreaded stress. But the root cause might be something deeper. Your body's production of nitric oxide dropping off. That one molecule plays a critical role in keeping your arteries open, your blood pressure normal, and your cells oxygenated. And without enough of it, you're not performing at the best mentally or physically. And that's why I've been taking Cardio Miracle for 2 years now. It's a nitric oxide powerhouse packed with over 50 ingredients like organic beetroot, L-arginine, CoQ10, vitamin D3 that are all clinically proven to help support circulation, reduce inflammation, and supercharge your energy levels. It's not just heart support, it's whole body support. So if you're tired of feeling off, give your heart and your health the boost it needs. Just click the link in the show notes or scan that little QR code over my shoulder or head to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS to start your journey today. Discount already applied. Just look for the note, "You're shopping with Brian Nichols" at checkout. One more time, that's cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. And now, let's get back to the show.
Clearly, you have an agenda. It is a threat to the public health of the American people. It's clear that you are carrying out your extremist beliefs, which is why you attempted to fire Dr.
Senator, we're
Manar.
the sickest people in the world. We're the sickest people on earth.
I'm speaking.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy.
Every single Republican, I don't mean to be political here, Mr. Chairman, has received PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. Are they all corrupt as well?
And I'm telling you, the American Heart Association has been co-opted by the food
Everybody but you, Senator. But you know what? When you ran for president, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Maybe you will agree with me on that. Okay, you were running for president. You had $1 billion behind it. You received $300,000 from people, not from the industry, people in it, as I did, from individuals. You corrupt. President Trump got $3 million. Every Republican got corporate PAC money for the pharmaceutical industry. Democrats as well. Everybody is corrupt. But you? Is that what we're looking at? I don't think so. And I think the issue now...
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I think you do know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The issue is every time anyone disagrees with you...
Are you saying the pharmaceutical industry was supporting my presidential campaign?
No, I'm saying... No, I'm not saying that. Every single...
So, Bernie obviously did wake up on the wrong side of the bed that day, but it is funny, right? Like, RFK raises a good point. Are you saying that I was supported by Big Pharma when, and Bernie's responding here to RFK as we're going through, we have one more clip we're going to show here with everybody's favorite Native American Senator Elizabeth Warren. But when you look at what happened during this hearing, every time you'd have a senator who was going out and just immediately shilling for the status quo narrative, which by and large is promoted by Big Pharma, RFK was able to say, hey, by the way, Senator blankety blank, you were supported by Big Pharma, or, name the favorite company, Pfizer, Moderna, whoever's out there, Johnson & Johnson, by XYZ dollars. And it is just funny. Like they need to have these senators where the proverbial NASCAR uniform, so they can have all the different little patches to show who they're bought and paid for by. And by the way, to Bernie's credit, he's right. It isn't just one side of the aisle. It is both sides of the aisle who are bought and paid for by a lot of these organizations out there. And this is corporatism at its finest. It's crony capitalism, where you have public policy that is being created in pursuit of supporting some, air quote, private industry that's out there. And then the narrative is, well, the people just want these vaccines. The people just want these solutions. It's like, oh, is that the case? Or are we creating policy that dictates you need to have these certain, these certain vaccinations? So, for example, if you want your kid to go to public school in certain states, we have to get your 70 plus vaccines from the childhood vaccine schedule in order for them to actually attend school. I'm sorry, like that's not just a free market solution. That is public policy being dictated in pursuit of promoting one particular, in this case, company or solution or product being force-fed on the American public in order to live in just traditional society. And this is what we saw during COVID, right? We saw with Operation Warp Speed, where government was working hand in hand with private industry to not just create these vaccinations, but then in turn, an attempt to mandate these vaccinations, which we saw firsthand with what we saw with the Joe Biden administration trying to force all the larger businesses out there to mandate that their employees get the jab. And again, I gave him some crap here earlier, but credit where credit's due. It was Ben Shapiro's org, the Daily Wire, who went ahead and they outright fought this in court and actually helped eliminate this policy, which credit where credit's due. Good work, right? Now, granted, Ben Shapiro, he still plays this, this fence sitter role of, maybe there are certain things that worked out. Like if you got the COVID vaccine and you were over the age of 65, like he does his whole thing there. But when we try to address the public policy side of things, like this is exactly why so many people don't trust, because they can see they can see everything, right? Then this is one of the benefits of the advent of the internet is that there is no just like behind the scenes backroom conversations that happen and then they just die there. Many of these conversations will manifest in videos online or in clips like this, where the truth is actually reaching more and more people and leading to more and more people asking questions or just saying outright, sorry, I don't believe you. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's conversation with, again, a quick clip here with RFK versus, again, everybody's favorite Native American, Elizabeth Warren. Let's go ahead and take a listen here.
You are effectively denying people vaccines.
We're not going to recommend a product for which there's no clinical data for that indication. Is that what I should be doing?
What you should be doing is honoring your promise that you made when you were looking to get confirmed in this job.
You're going like
and
this.
That is, you promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them. You just changed the classification of the COVID vaccine.
I'm not taking them away from people, Senator.
It takes it away if you can't get it from your pharmacist.
Well, most Americans are going to be able to get it from their pharmacy for free. Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy for free.
The question is, everyone who wants it, that was your promise.
I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying when you said that? Because you are the one who said you would not take them away. Now, Senator Kennedy,
I'm not taking them away from anybody.
Secretary,
you want me to indicate a product for which there is no clinical data?
Senator,
is that what you want?
Secretary Kennedy, you said you wouldn't, and now you did.
I'm not taking them away. Everybody can get access to them.
No, they can't walk into a pharmacy the way they could last month and get access.
It depends on the states.
A year ago,
but they can still get it. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it, Senator.
So look, let's move on. You clearly are taking away vaccines. I've seen the list for what's coming up next. And
the buffoonery from folks like Elizabeth Warren, right? And the attempt to reframe the narrative as you're taking vaccines away, right? Versus what really is happening is the removal of this buddy-buddy backroom relationship between the big pharma organizations that are out there and our public policymakers and regulators. And this right here speaks to why, again, so many folks are just tired. They're tired of the nonsense. They're tired of the narrative. Like, and I didn't mean to go this way, but like, Dr. Mike, I'm not sure if you folks follow Dr. Mike. He's big over on YouTube. Like, he hates RFK as a doctor. And I've watched Dr. Mike's videos, and I've seen, some of the just non-political videos he's done. But like in some of the non-political videos, there are narratives that Dr. Mike will present that are they are so goofball. Like there was one where he was arguing that the different dyes that are in our foods, like that's just a contrived narrative that's pushed forward to make people scared. It's like, and hear me out, Dr. Mike, there is 1000% credible data and evidence showing that there are direct correlations between the increase in food dyes and the behavioral issues, the genetic issues that happen, especially with our young kids who are taking these different dyes in their foods, like red dye 40, yellow 5, so on and so forth. To see him in one breath say, "Oh, this is all just loony bin stuff," and then on the other side just be so anti folks like RFK, it does kind of speak to like, listen, I get it. You're in public health. You've been, I'm going to use the word indoctrinated, but you've been indoctrinated here into believing whatever narrative you've been presented. And the problem is a lot of our folks in public health are actually not even in favor of public health. What they're in favor of is responding to health problems, not addressing the health problems before they become problems. And this is the society that we've really built up over the past, half century, is this society that is constantly sick, and all the solutions being built by the public health institutions are in response to the things that we're dealing with in the chronic issues, the chronic diseases that we see manifest across all of our population. I think all of us, whether it's me recording here today with you sitting there and listening, your friends, your family, we all know of someone who is dealing with some chronic health issue. And this didn't exactly exist necessarily back in the 50s or 40s or 30s. Why? What changed? And a lot of it has been our approach to health. It used to be our approach to health was being proactive, to actually live a healthy lifestyle, to eat whole foods, to go out and get daily exercise, to not be putting synthetic chemicals into our bodies or into our environments around us, right? And what we've seen in response to that is instead of promoting that mentality, hey, let's allow all these different chemicals or the garbage into our food, our food and such, or let's go ahead and put all these chemicals into our body and a manifestation of chronic disease. Okay, well, I guess we got to go ahead and fix that with another pill, another jab, another something. And this is why we have such an issue, because it's always where people are trying to present solutions in response to problems that were caused by what? By some public health air quote solution. And the problem has again manifested in a society that is the unhealthiest society we have seen ever in America. So I say all that. Sorry, folks like Dr. Mike. Sorry, Elizabeth Warren. You can sit there and act holier than thou. You can sit there and actually respond with narratives versus like real data. But the American public are awake. And this is something that we've never had, again, as an opportunity as a country, because this is the first time where anything and everything from data is available. You don't have to just sit there and, watch the evening news at 6:00 at night and hope you're getting in 30 minutes everything you need to know. You can sit down and dig deeper. You can actually do some research, watch podcasts, watch interviews, watch YouTube videos, watch Rumble videos, whatever it may be. Scroll through X, catch clips to get more context. And what we're seeing is that as more and more folks have more and more information, it allows them not only to paint a better picture, but allows them to actually dig deeper, to understand more of the why behind the scenes versus just taking the narrative at face value. And I'm just telling you, folks, as the boomer generation starts to disappear, as Gen X starts to get older, and as the millennials and the younger Gen Zers and even Gen Alpha start to move up in the world in terms of our market share, if you will, of the population, you're going to see that there's going to be a less of a trust of the official narrative and more of a, hey, I have done some of my own research, and I don't take don't do your own research narrative too kindly, because that's what I expect for my daily life. I expect me to go out and do the research to understand what works, what doesn't work, and try to get both sides of the conversation so I feel more educated. But just being told this is the truth, TM, right? This is the truth from the science, from the experts, TM, like that doesn't fly anymore. And yes, there will be some folks like your Dr. Mikes of the world who will eat this kind of stuff up, and they'll buy it hook, line, and sinker and actually turn into salespeople for the establishment and for the narrative. But the reality, again, is that the overarching American populace is awake. This is why RFK had such success in his presidential campaign and why he is in the seat that he's in right now at HHS. It's why so many folks during COVID, whether it was parents who were saying, what the hell is happening in my kids' schools, or folks who were like, no, I'm not going to be forced to get a vaccination just to have my job, or, oh, we have a COVID pandemic, I need to be mandated by the government to lock down my business, to shut down my business, to not go to church, to not go to public parks, to be forced to wear a mask inside, outside, everywhere, to be told that you're a danger, you're a threat to society if you want to go ahead and live your life freely because you're not buying the narrative. People are tired of it and they're done. So I say all that. If you got some value from today's episode, I hope you did. Please go ahead and give it a share. And of course, if you want to go ahead and dig deeper, we have like literally dozens and dozens of episodes we've done here on the COVID pandemic. If you're watching us here on YouTube, head over to the playlists. We have an entire COVID 19 lockdown playlist that's built out where I think we have all the videos from 2020-ish and onward where we dug into this and more, or head over to briannicholsshow.com. Again, you can find that exact same playlist, and it goes back even further when we were just doing the audio versions of the show as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in today's conversation. Thank you for hanging out with me on a solo episode today. Hopefully you enjoyed today's one-on-one. I haven't done these in a while. I think the last one I did was my episode 1000, but beyond that, we usually have interviews. So it's nice to just be able to sit down and actually talk with you guys today. And yeah, we went through some fun clips. With that being said, if you, again, got some value from the episode, beyond going ahead and giving it a share, go ahead and support the show by subscribing to the show at your favorite podcast catcher like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or head over to Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook, and you can watch the show. We air our show every Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. We also live stream the show over on those respective channels as well at 9 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you hit that little subscribe button and, of course, that little notification bell so you don't miss a single time we go live. But with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.